Welcome, everyone. Got Charles Hoskins in the house today as well, which is awesome. Welcome, Charles. I caught your AMA. It was a great shirt you're wearing, by the way. Hopefully I'm representing the cool shirt club well today, without a doubt. We're actually going to be talking about Cardano a little bit later on in the chat. But today's main topic, Ethereum and the competition. As we all know right now, Ethereum is having some issues with scalability. And those scalability issues are starting to have a real impact on the Ethereum blockchain, as the majority of tokens out there are based on Ethereum currently, of course. Every day we do see more and more of the competitor chains starting to add in and take a bit of that market share away. And I think that's a really positive thing for the space, actually, to see these competitor chains actually adding in a little bit and starting to move away from Ethereum. But we're going to start off with the chat on Ethereum, particularly looking at how Ethereum is scaling and how Ethereum is proposing to scale. And then we're going to be talking a bit about some of the competitors and their propositions for scalability in our ever-growing blockchain ecosystem. And by the way, Charles, we got to have a chat again one of these days. It'd be really great to have you back on the show to talk about the updates from Cardano. I was actually thinking I need to do a Cardano update review video. I've been going through a process of the "Where are they now?" videos, and my Cardano review is getting a bit old, so it's definitely time to have a look at that again, but also time for us to have a chat again as well. So open invite anytime you want to come on, Charles, just let me know. Now, I want to do a couple of quick announcements before we get into our main chat here. The first, be careful out there. There has been emails going around recently from CryptoLark@gmail.com. That is not me. I am the CryptoLark@gmail.com. This CryptoLark imposter is asking people for money. This is a reminder. I will never send you an email asking you for money. I will never send you an email saying, I've got some amazing investment opportunity for you, only for my few lucky subscribers, and you're that one lucky subscriber. That's not going to be the case, guys. It's only going to be a situation of, this is how I communicate with you here on the channel. We talk about projects. I try to give my opinions on things. I keep you up to date with the news, and also trying to educate people a bit on how to work in the blockchain space. So, be careful. It's not just email, it's also Telegram, it's also Twitter. So all of my true verified accounts are listed in the link of every YouTube description. But be careful. Remember, I will never ask you guys for money. Second announcement, I've got some sweet, sweet CryptoLark shirts to give away. I've actually got two going. I've got one for ladies and one for men. So one is in a female cut style. I'll actually show you guys here real quick what those look like. So they are both larges. We've got a large for men and a large for ladies. Here we go. Picture here. So this is actually the variant for men's. This is the large edition. The female edition is a little bit different. So if you're a man and you want to be in to win, come over here on Twitter and hit the retweet button. For the ladies, you have to go to yesterday's news video and leave a comment there saying something like, put me in for the shirt, Lark. Or of course, if there is a special lady in your life who would like to get a CryptoLark shirt for, go over there and let me know that as well. So, Ethereum and scalability. Well, currently we are going to see the Casper update happening in 2019. This will be moving Ethereum to a proof of stake model. But what we really want to know about is sharding. And sharding is being touted as one of the big value propositions in terms of how Ethereum is going to scale. And sharding is a great option. It really is. But 2020 is a long time away. In crypto years, that's like 10 years, really. And it's a long time. And that, of course, is when in 2020? Is that January 1st, 2020? Or is that, December 30th, 2020? It makes a big difference depending on which day it comes out. And of course, will it actually come out in 2020? It's quite hard to bring these updates in. Charles coming in here and saying 2020 because they realize the science is hard and the foundations of Casper aren't strong. It's really hard to change once you've already started. And this is a highly problematic situation because Ethereum's already been running. And so to run such dramatic updates to the protocol, it's very, very tricky to do. It's not just a question of running out on the testnet and saying, well, that kind of works, and then going. You have billions of dollars at stake here. Billions of dollars at stake on the Ethereum network. And that is an incredibly important thing to remember. That's why these updates are taking so long, or at least is part of the reason why these updates are taking such a long time. Because you have to get it right. If you screw it up, you've got a lot of money at stake. Mr. Harry Lasagna saying, still pretty risky to change the consensus of such a huge model with Ethereum. It is, and they're going to. And we will see how it works, of course. And that is where all the competition comes in. That there are so many different projects that are looking technically superior to Ethereum, especially given Ethereum's current state. So, recently we have seen a problem as well with Ethereum, with gas prices going up. Actually, the gas price right now, not too bad, 6 cents at the moment. But the reality is, over the past few days, we've seen a lot of up and down variations in the price of gas for Ethereum. And I was sending some transactions the other day and they were costing a few dollars each. And that's not really sustainable for the network. I know that doesn't compare to, for example, when Bitcoin back in December and January was costing $60, $70, $80, $90 to send a transaction. But still, for Ethereum, which wants to be the world's supercomputer, so to speak, well, that's not really acceptable. We need to have lower prices for transactions because everything's going across the chain right now. And when you have that situation of all these different transactions hitting the chain, well, all of a sudden, it becomes very problematic. And so the fees, it's definitely tricky. And when you look at, for example, EOS and their, quote unquote, zero fee model, where they simply kind of factor in the inflation that gets paid out to the 21 block producers, well, that's a bit of a different situation. Cardano, for example, they're looking at a set fee for transactions because there's not miners to pay. It is a proof of stake system. Radiant Lunatic says, I tried to buy Cardano but couldn't get a wallet to work with my system. That is a persistent problem, I think, for a lot of people with many of the top cryptocurrencies, which is where Ethereum, in my opinion, really has an edge, is that so many wallets are having so many problems. I mean, my Cardano wallet, I haven't been able to access it for months, and I got a message back from support basically saying we don't have any solutions for you at this time. And so that's a bit of a tricky situation. And I've heard quite a few others about this as well. And that's not just a Cardano thing. That's a lot of different cryptocurrencies are having trouble with their wallets. Whereas Ethereum has remained quite easy to use in terms of its wallet experience. But you have to remember with Cardano, Cardano is new technology. So of course there's going to be some bumps along the road. I don't mind hodling my Cardano anyway. I was quite happy to let it sit there regardless. So for me, it's not such a big issue. I realize that issue will be dealt with in time. It's simply a question of when that's actually going to happen. Charles says we have an update coming in early August and also a new wallet coming out that's targeting those who are having issues with Daedalus. There you go, straight from the man himself. See? So that's really great to see, actually, that those updates will be coming really soon. And I think that was the response that I actually got from the team, is that watch out for the early August updates. Should be solving the issues that you're having. So it's all in progress. And I think this is one thing to really keep in mind overall with where we're at right now with blockchains. And Ethereum is getting a lot of heat, but it also has a lot of support behind it. Because Ethereum gets heat because right now it is used so much. There are so many projects built on it. There's so many people ICOing on Ethereum, and it has to work, basically. Whereas everyone else gets to kind of learn from Ethereum's mistakes and gets to innovate ahead of Ethereum without having to change the whole system retrospectively, which is an important thing. Currently, the Ethereum mempool, 50,000 pending transactions. Though that's not terrible. Theoretically, if there were no transactions going across the Ethereum blockchain, they'd be able to clear that backlog out at the 15 transactions per second in a relatively short amount of time. But that's a lot of transactions that are pending, and a lot of people are not getting their transactions through, or they're certainly not getting them through very quickly. So we come into scaling Ethereum. And the scaling of Ethereum is a thing that a lot of people are working on. And it's not just about sharding and developers and sharding. It actually comes into a lot of different outside solutions in terms of people who are working on side chains, for example. Loom is one of those who is working on trying to make Ethereum better. And we have a lot of people doing that. It's not just Loom. The guys over at Omisego are working on their own implementations. The guys at Sonum are also working on a side chain for Ethereum. And so they're all working on it. Everyone's trying to make Ethereum run better. It's like we have a Ford Model T. And that was a great car, but everyone's trying to put new tires on the Model T and put a new engine into the Model T and put a new steering wheel on the Model T, all while it's going down the highway at 100 kilometers an hour. And that's a tricky situation when it comes down to it. And Jeremy says, CryptoKitties will always haunt them. Oh, it just may. Hey, Corey, how's it going? CryptoKitties was the start of the issues for Ethereum. Now we have this F-coin situation where they have account voting going on, and that is very problematic. And we have off-chain scaling solutions coming as well. Side chains, in my opinion, are a little more compelling. However, we do have a lot of people working on off-chain solutions as well. And obviously, off-chain does have its problems. But off-chain also has a lot of potential to increase the capacity for it. Any thoughts on Decred, says Kat. Decred's cool. Never got into it myself personally. I've done a review on it, but Decred's a nice solid one. Okay. Then we have the blockchains that want to talk to Ethereum or are kind of based on Ethereum. We have Quantum, for example, which is a mix of Bitcoin and Ethereum code base. They also want to be interoperable with Ethereum. They're running the Ethereum virtual machine. They're also going to be running their own virtual machine, the x86, soon. And of course, one thing they want to do is to be able to invite people to come over to Quantum. Now, Quantum is currently around 80 transactions per second, so that's without a doubt better than Ethereum. But you have to start looking at and thinking, we're going to need systems that can scale to thousands, hundreds of thousands of transactions per second. Just take a stop for a moment and think, what about Facebook? Imagine if Facebook was run on a blockchain. Is there any blockchain currently that could actually run Facebook? And that is a tricky situation because a lot of blockchains are developing very quickly, but none of them would quite be capable of actually running something that has that many useless transactions going through. And it would, of course, be on-chain and off-chain and all these different things. But the fact does remain that we need to see this scalability happening. And with Quantum, for example, we've got I think it's about 80 transactions per second, and that number may not be accurate. It's the last time I looked, but with that kind of a situation happening, well, you could just have the financial transactions going across the chain, but then when you start getting enough financial transactions or tips, or you look at Steemit and their model where you can upvote somebody and kind of tip them. Well, imagine if Facebook was doing something like that. Whale Camp says Facebook is lame. Well, I agree Facebook is lame, but it doesn't deny the fact that there are a billion daily users or hundreds of millions of daily users, if not. And that's a lot of people. That's a lot of likes. You ever thought about how many data centers must be just filled up just containing the historical data of who liked what post? That's a big waste of energy. And that is going on, though. WhenChain is another that is working on interoperability between blockchains. And the interoperability equation for me is a really important one because no one blockchain needs to solve all the world's problems. Just in the same way that no one internet service provider provides all the internet and no one car manufacturer provides all the cars, there will be options. The challenge for Ethereum is to stay relevant because the options are looking increasingly good. We have proof of stake models, which don't require all the mining hardware and the Chinese warehouses full of GPUs, which are heavily influencing the network, for example. And new implementations are coming. And yes, Ethereum has been playing with ZK snarks, which is nice to see. But then we have WhenChain. WhenChain's looking here and going, hey, you know what? We're going to put in ring signatures for our smart contracts. So we're going to have private cross-chain smart contracts. That already puts it steps ahead of what Ethereum is doing. And that's really cool. And when you start to realize, hey, wait a second, it's also proof of stake and can be potentially more scalable. But again, they have that edge of looking at what Ethereum did, learning from their mistakes, and then being able to build something after that. Of course, you also need to realize that, again, primary focus, Ethereum code base, interoperable with Ethereum, cross-chain asset transfers and data and value transfers with Ethereum as a primary focus. So that's something to keep in mind. Then we got the guys over at Aeon. Aeon as well is one of those projects solely focused on trying to get Ethereum to scale. And you really see that there are so many people out there trying to make Ethereum work. And that in of itself tells me that yes, at some point Ethereum is going to scale. Ethereum is going to meet the challenge. You do have to realize that there are a lot of people heavily invested into making Ethereum work. And that's an important part of the equation here. It really, really is. And so when you look at that push behind Ethereum to get Ethereum working, to make it operable, that becomes really, really cool. But it has to happen, and it has to happen soon. The reality is that Ethereum had the first mover advantage in terms of getting in here and providing smart contracts on the blockchain. But it may not be last, or certainly if Ethereum does get all the updates pushed through in time and manages to keep a robust network, that does not mean that the competitors won't start to eat into their market share. Because the competitors are increasingly looking pretty awesome. We have better technical implementations. We have all these things that are being built to start and don't need to be added in later while the car is going down the motorway. And that is an important part of the equation here. Now, the next one, Ethereum Classic. Now, this is a direct competitor to Ethereum. Now, if you are not aware of the Ethereum Classic, Ethereum divide, Ethereum Classic is actually the original Ethereum. The Ethereum that everyone likes and is number 2 on CoinMarketCap is actually the fork coin. Now, that's a long story there, but Ethereum Classic, do not count it out. Ethereum Classic has been working very strongly on development. They've got regular yearly summits now where they come together and hang out. We've got a lot of development happening over here. In 2018, what do we have? We have sidechains. Sidechains, of course, a massive part of the implementation when it comes to scalability. And because Ethereum Classic probably doesn't have so much running across it right now, it actually makes it a bit easier for them to update it, which is really cool. Now, we have lots of other things as well. We have the Sputnik virtual machine coming on Ethereum Classic. So Ethereum Classic, you can really see, is starting to cut its own path. Corey says, ETC, the original scam coin. Oh, man. Putting out some fishing bait there, huh, Corey? 2019 for Ethereum Classic. Sharding is going to come in. Now, that is before Ethereum, by the way. That's actually a year before Ethereum thinks that they're going to get sharding done. And hey, look, let's see the proof in the pudding, as we like to say. Will they actually get sharding implemented in time? If so, that gives them 1,000 transactions per second, compared to 15. Interesting. That is much, much more scalable when it comes to comparing the two on, of course, a simple transaction per second equation. They're also going to be focusing on interoperability with other blockchains, bringing in the zero-knowledge proofs that have already been implemented over on Ethereum. So it's definitely coming. The guys over at Ethereum Classic, far from taking the whole breakup with the rest of the Ethereum community lying down, have actually been working very hard to maintain their relevance, which is cool. I'm very glad to see that happening. Next up, EOS. Oh, EOS, EOS, EOS. It gets so much press. So much press. Atomic Sparks. EOS is perfect for your shoe shop, not for enterprises. Look, EOS is a very divisive topic when it comes down to it. Because you look at EOS, and the year-long ICO was really quite genius because it let them raise $4 billion and go through all kinds of different ups and downs in terms of hype. And I've done a recent review on EOS, and somebody says, oh, this is a really biased review, and you just talked about a lot of the negatives. Well, I just talked about what I found as the facts for EOS. And, oh, there we go. I was wondering how long it'd be before somebody brought up, pedophilia in regards to EOS. Anyway, besides the point. I've got a lot of criticisms of EOS, and you have 21 block producers who are basically running the show. And as those people continue to hold those positions, their power will only grow over time. And EOS is some kind of, I don't know, free market economic fantasy experiment. But will the long-term potential of EOS actually pan out to being something important? Remember, they have given up decentralization in favor of scalability. And there's been so many problems currently with the way that EOS has been approaching their market debut. And okay, there were a lot of great ideas in terms of let's let the market do it and all these things. But at the same time, I think people want security. I think people want reliability in their transactions. A thing like freezing accounts, well, sure, it might be being used now to help recover people's funds, but how long until that becomes a censoring people you don't like? That kind of power, when given to people, is likely to be abused. And you look at what's happening currently with the RAM markets for EOS, and it's wild. It's absolutely wild. You need RAM in order to run your dApps on EOS, but there's a speculative market going for them, which is just ridiculously priced and doesn't say to me this is a stable platform where I can go and build my dApp, especially when I have other situations where I can go and build on top of that blockchain and I can have dependability in terms of what I'm signing up for. And that's an important difference to make between EOS and some of the other blockchains. Will the long-term idea of EOS play out well? Potentially. There might be use cases for it. I'm not, totally crashing down on EOS here and saying that, EOS is terrible or anything like that, but I'm saying it's got a lot of problems, and I'm not convinced yet that it is going to be the solution that the hype makes it out to be. Crypto Brad, Lark, have you sent a transaction on EOS? Do that, then review it. Nothing wrong with a free market deciding the price of RAM. Crypto Brad, I would disagree with you respectfully. What we have is when we have a quote-unquote free market deciding the price of RAM, that price can get pushed way past where it actually should be. And I talk about this in the sense of I don't want to see EOS fail. I'm not trying to say that EOS is a bad project or is doomed to fail, not without a doubt. But if you look at why would I come and build on EOS if there are inflated prices for something as simple as RAM? It doesn't make sense to me. Why wouldn't I just go and build on another platform or on something that isn't even blockchain based? Something to keep in mind. ELA is the biggest sleeper, says Kevin DeFilippo. One thing, by the way, is that there are so many blockchain projects, and we're actually only talking about a few of them today, guys, because there are so many. There are so many, and so many of them have different implementations. So many of them have different ideas behind them. So many of them have slightly different ways to trying to get to the same destination. And that's an important thing to keep in mind, that we are going to see a lot of different blockchains in the future. And we're going to see a lot of different iterations of different ideas of blockchains. We're going to see privacy-centric blockchains. We're going to see super public open blockchains. And we're going to see all of these different things coming out. Now, let's go on to our next one, Cardano. Now, we've got the expert in the house today, which is pretty awesome. Cardano is a project that I have long been very excited about, and I always appreciated the focus of Cardano on having this peer review process of trying to make the best code possible. Now, that does, at the end of the day, mean that you do have a bit of slow academia behind it. academics don't always make their decisions the fastest. But at the same time, you will get better results, or I believe you will get better results. We look at EOS, for example, and they had a year and $4 billion, and then they were paying bug bounties the last few minutes to random people on the internet trying to make sure that there weren't any fatal errors, and fatal errors were found in the bug bounty program. But that's crazy. Why wouldn't they have just hired in-house to make sure that they were deploying the best code possible? That's something to keep in mind. So I've always really appreciated that peer review process that Cardano is pushing for. If you look at, for example, let's talk about fees. Cardano's got a set fee. Chuck A says, Lark has turned into a fudder. Too bad. Chuck, it's not FUD, my friend. I'm just repeating the things about EOS that are actual concerns and that need to be addressed by the EOS community. It's not FUD. This is what's actually happening. If I was making things up or lying, well, then that would be a different situation. It's like I said, I wish the best for the EOS blockchain, but you have to have honest conversations. And if you're an EOS investor, you should be asking those questions of the EOS community, because these are the things that are going to hurt you in the long run as your project tries to develop, because the competition's fierce. And you can't have these dramas happening. You can't have this centralization and all these different things. It will hurt EOS in the long run. And I want to see EOS succeed. That's something I really want to underline here. I want to see EOS succeed. But the community has to deal with these issues before they become set in stone problems. So keep that in mind. Now, back to Cardano. So if we look at the fees on Cardano, if I'm correct, it's 0.01 Cardano to send a transaction. That, of course, might change in the future. But that's pretty cheap. That's a nice set fee. It is a proof of stake model, so there are no miners that you have to pay like with Ethereum. It'll be really interesting for me when Ethereum switches over to its proof of stake model, and really to see how that's going to go in terms of what the fees will be like for Ethereum. Charles saying fees will eventually be market-based. We fixed the fees for the Byron release. There you go. Now, another interesting thing about Cardano, and actually this is one of the great things about EOS as well, is that potential massive scalability. And we do need massively scalable blockchain platforms. And so that's something very important to keep in mind here, is that we can see potential as, of course, more nodes and more people staking out there grow on the network. We get more scalability coming to Cardano, but also with EOS, they are also promising massive scalability. The question is, with EOS, we are seeing that sacrifice of decentralization, and 21 nodes, some will say, is still pretty decentralized. I would argue differently, because it's decentralized, but you have 21 people who might all be colluding together to keep their positions, and you can't just, as a normal person, go and say, hey, I would like to be a block producer. Well, it doesn't quite work like that. Whereas with, for example, Cardano, anybody can stake coins. With Ethereum, if you can go buy yourself a GPU, you can partake in securing the network. And I think that is really, really powerful. So I'm definitely bullish long-term on Cardano. I've got my concerns about EOS, as you guys can see. And again, I wish all the best for EOS, but I am not an investor in EOS anymore at this time. But I'm still holding on to my Cardano, because I think that they are really going exciting places. I think that Cardano's got a massive potential moving forward, and really looking forward to seeing the updates roll out and for the blockchain to get to be fully operational. So on to our next one, Stellar. Stellar has been doing a lot recently, and I know there has been some rumblings about XRP bringing in some kind of variation of smart contract, but Stellar, I feel like, is leaps and bounds ahead of where XRP is. It's just that the market price doesn't actually reflect that. And that's a bit of a different situation. But I really like what Stellar has been doing. I really like the focus of Stellar. Of course, seeing ICOs coming to Stellar is great. We've got a new Stellar DEX coming up here in the near future, and that's pretty awesome as well. So definitely with Stellar, it's one of the premier blockchains in my opinion, and it will continue to be moving forward because they're bringing so much more to the table than, XRP obviously. But when it comes to a lot of the other blockchains too, Stellar is well established. They've got great connections. So there's no wonder that they're a top 20 project. Neo. Now, Neo is a project that I know everybody has been very excited about for a long time. And I like Neo too. I really do. But I really am excited about the future of the decentralization of Neo. Neo right now offering 10,000 transactions per second, but you have to remember it's a fairly closed network. We won't actually see Neo getting highly decentralized until about a year or so from now. In fact, they're only just the other day made an announcement saying, hey, we're going to start decentralizing. And, well, hey, that's cool. That's cool. I'm all about that decentralization process. But let's see that move forward. Let's actually see that be implemented in a very robust way. Because centralization is not cool. Nobody likes centralization. Nobody likes having a company pull the strings of a project because that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem. And so if we can see Neo developing like that, that's going to be amazing. And it could be a very good model moving forward. Obviously, holding Neo and getting that gas payout is very lucrative as well. Not all proof-of-stake models are created equally in terms of their payouts. I think. Okay, let's move on to the next one here. Waves. Waves has been doing a lot for quite a long time, and we're just going to start seeing smart contracts coming to Waves here in the near future, and that is a very exciting development to be seeing in Waves. Somebody keeps asking in the comments section about, can we cover FOMO 3D, please? No, we cannot. I assume there's probably something like Proof of We Can's 3D. It sounds like the same kind of name. So if it's anything to do with that, then I will not be covering it on this channel. So if you're looking for me to cover that, you're in the wrong place. Now, Waves, I am a massive fan of their decentralized exchange. It's great. You put money on your wallet, which is your Waves wallet, and you can access quite a few different cryptos already. They've got Monero and Zcash and Bitcoin Cash and Ethereum. They don't have ERC20 tokens yet, but they do have a pretty good range of tokens, which I'm very encouraged by. And more importantly, you can actually get US dollars or euros uploaded to your Waves wallet, which is pretty awesome. I'll be talking to Sasha this week, actually. I'm assuming he shows up to the interview. Sometimes interviews don't go through, but I think Waves has been developing really well. Since I first checked into Waves and have been kind of following the progress of Waves, I've been very happy to see their progress and definitely be keeping an eye on this one. But it's much more sort of under the radar. But then you can see that Waves has, partnerships with like the country of Kazakhstan. And I know some of you guys may be like, Kazakhstan? Where's that? Well, look, Kazakhstan's got a lot of people, and if their government is partnered with Waves, that's potentially a really, really great partnership for them, even if they were just to be the the blockchain provider for the country of Kazakhstan, that would give them great value. But to see their connections with, for example, the Russian government, for example, that's where we might see some really, really great use cases coming out for Waves. Of course, Ethereum is already being used by the Russian government and by the Russian banks, so Waves has got to play a bit of catch up there when it comes down to it in terms of business deals. NEM. Okay, so NEM has been one of those projects that has been out there and really pushing for community. I'm always impressed by how much NEM gets around. Those guys are busy, busy, busy. Seriously. They are doing meetups globally like every day somewhere, and that is really, really cool. And mind ya bees knees. Hey, Lark, did you get that crypto watch I sent you in the mail? I did, and I actually talked about it on the show a little while ago. You can see here. Thank you very much for that watch when you sent it out. And I think I made a note for anyone who wanted to pick one up as well. I think I left a link to the website where you can go get those watches. So thank you again for the watch. It's very cool. Very, very cool indeed. Now, NEM, 4,000 transactions per second. Again, compare that to our old buddy Ethereum, and NEM's actually smashing it. Now, that Catapult release is on their private chain, which is called Mijin, but it's also on their public chain, NEM. However, when we look at NEM, I think it's still in the early access program for Catapult on NEM, but nevertheless, NEM has been busy. There's a lot of different ICOs happening on NEM. There's a lot of dApps being built on top of NEM, and it has proven itself to be quite a robust blockchain. The only real drama happening with NEM didn't have anything to do with NEM at all. It was the idiots over at CoinCheck leaving $500 million worth of NEM sitting in a hot wallet. That was the probably biggest drama that NEM has had so far. Okay, on to the next one. I'll close that down. VeChain. Oh my gosh, the VeChain. These guys, I swear, this is like the coolest trailer for a blockchain project. They've certainly spent some of their funds well on this crazy, crazy trailer they have. VeChain has got a mind-blowing amount of partnerships. We're actually going to close that out so don't make anyone go into like an epileptic seizure or something with that crazy, crazy background going there. We'll just look at their Twitter page behind me. Now, these guys have been doing very, very well in terms of nailing amazing partnerships. So I've really been encouraged by the growth of VeChain, the direction that VeChain's been moving in. Their whole node system as well seems to be quite robust and quite decentralized, which is good, which is definitely good. And there's still some, in terms of being able to access the top node positions, it gets a bit tricky, but nevertheless, those are going to be public nodes. And I really think that VeChain's going places. Their partnerships is just, wow. So many big companies, so many links to, the government in China, for example, and different regional governments in China, and massive partners. So definitely VeChain is one that has got a lot of attention recently, and that is deserved attention because they have been doing very well. Joe says, Enigma will run the decentralized web, the ultimate utility token. Yeah, Enigma is pretty cool. I like their idea of secret contracts. And again, we're going to see that first implementation coming to Ethereum. Speaking of projects that are trying to make Ethereum better. Josh Romporti, Charles Hoskinson, 2020 presidential run. No, Charles isn't allowed to run for president. Cardano's too important. It's more important than, being the head monkey in Washington, D.C. Although that would be pretty cool, Charles. I must say. Okay, Next up is Tasos. Now, I'm going to try and actually do a proper review of Tasos for you this week. Got a couple other projects I'm trying to review this week as well, but I'll really try and get that Tasos review in for you because it's finally trading on exchanges. And I'll just say it right now, I am not an expert on Tasos by any means. In fact, I know very little about it just because of all the drama that's been going on, the fact that it hasn't been available on exchanges, etc., etc. But I think it's really making a lot of people take notice that it's come into CoinMarketCap at such a high position. I think it was number 19 on CoinMarketCap last time I looked. Charles says, you couldn't pay me enough to run for president. America wrecks its candidates. Oh, it does. And I think being the president makes you age like 10 years for every year you sit in that office. No. Better things to do, Charles. Now, Tasos, I really want to get a dive into the tech here and really find out what's making it tick underneath. But I feel like this is going to be definitely getting a lot of notice over the next few months here as we actually see it coming out. So definitely want to keep an eye on, but I don't have too much information for it on you today. Icon, obviously Icon has been getting a lot of press. Hyperconnect the world. It's a great tagline. But we start to get down to this point with the conversation on blockchains and the competition to Ethereum. And there's so many of them. Obviously Icon, we have Zilliqa, which is aiming to have currently 2,828 transactions. Slower than them, way faster than Ethereum. We have Nebulous, which is really developing a great ecosystem at the moment. Lots of dApps are being built on Nebulous currently. We have Elastos, which I know a lot of people in the community are super excited about Elastos, and I'm quite excited about Elastos too. I think they're going to do some really great things as they move forward. But there are so many of them. It is a crowded blockchain space when it comes down to it. And I am a blockchain enthusiast in the sense that I see a lot of blockchains all existing together, all having their use cases. There's going to be lots of interoperability going on, and that's amazing. And there's new blockchains I haven't even mentioned. We have Quark Chain, which has just come out. We have other new blockchains. We have Argo coming up soon in an ICO. We have Komodo. I haven't even talked about Komodo today. We have Ardor. We have Nexus. There are so many blockchains. It's crazy. It really is. Interoperability between blockchains is going to be an absolute necessity. Any blockchain I feel that's not even considering interoperability at the moment is behind. Because that interoperability is very important. You don't want to have all of these islands that don't have any bridges to each other. And that's where the interoperability comes in. Even if Ethereum stayed an old dinosaur at 15 transactions per second and never... And its great trick was that it was the ICO engine of the rest of the cryptocurrency space. It could exist like that because all the other blockchains have higher transactions per second and potentially better tech as they're developing now. Obviously, we need to see that tech come out. We need to see proof of that tech. Not to mention, of course, again, that Ethereum is already working on that. But they're all going to have their use cases. Imagine in 10 years when if your business doesn't have blockchain, it's going to be like your business not having the internet. Imagine how many businesses right now don't at least have a web page or a Facebook page or the internet overall. No, it'd be crazy. You'd be crazy to talk about that. And when we see the blockchain ecosystem expanding, James says, what about Lisk too? And again, if I was to sit here and give an overview of every single blockchain that's currently listed on CoinMarketCap, we'd be here for like 4 or 5 hours, guys. We really would. But But. Talking between blockchains, very important part of the equation. The scalability issues, there's so many different approaches to it, and I'm very encouraged to see all these awesome teams out there who are so passionate about what they do. And if you ever get a chance to go to a conference, for example, and to meet some of these CEOs or key developers, you just realize the passion of people for decentralization or for creating innovative technology, which is going to have this positive effect on the world. And that is awesome. And that's part of what keeps me coming here every day, making videos to share with the community, because I'm excited about this technology. I'm excited about the potential for decentralization on society. I love the experimental projects that are going on in terms of people testing out new things. You know, Horizon State's working on voting on the blockchain, and I think that's great. I think that's really, really great. Let's test it out. Let's do it. Let's get a national election to happen on the blockchain. Let's do it, because if we don't do it, then the question's always out there. And that's important. And that's just the start of it. We see even experimental societies, and I know we talked about the what was that? The seasteading people, the Blue Frontiers guys. They want to make their little island country off the coast of Tahiti, which is a great location, minus the hurricanes and stuff, but very nice weather, without a doubt. Now, it's a great idea, and I'm very skeptical of the whole Blue Frontiers seasteading thing, but you know what? Try it out. You want to do blockchain governance? Go do you guys. Let's try out all of these new technologies. Let's push the barrier of where our society's at today, because we need new solutions. It is so important to see these new solutions coming out, to see people pushing the boundaries in terms of what we think is normal or what we think is possible technologically. This is the future. And by being an investor, you are part of that future. If you want to do more than just invest, go take part in these communities. There's massive communities out there for all these cryptocurrencies. If you're a big Elastos fan, go start taking part in the Reddit. Go start taking part in the Telegram group. You know, run a meetup in your town. You can run a meetup for a lot of cryptocurrencies, and they even have funds for them. I know the guys over at NEM, for example, if you want to be a person running meetups in your town, they've got a fund for that. They'll pay for your pizza and your soda or whatever it might be. You get together, talk about NEM, talk about blockchain, and let people know about the new technology. Again, it's one of those situations. Imagine if it was the 1990s and nobody told you about the internet. And then 5 or 10 years later, like, hey, why didn't you tell me about the internet when you were using it back in the day? Oh, well, I didn't think you'd be interested. It's kind of where we're at right now. Anyway, those are just my thoughts on what's happening with Ethereum and the competition to Ethereum. 0x Matt, thank you for the contribution. Do you still like Bloom? One of my favorite low caps. You know, I haven't been following Bloom too closely, to be honest. I'd be really interested to see when they actually get that decentralized credit scoring system rolled out, but I'll have a pop into their website and see how they have been developing recently. Anyway, thank you so much to everyone for coming out and chatting today. Thanks to Charles for popping in and chatting with the community. I think it always says a lot about Charles. You know, I see you at conferences just talking to everybody, and other big company CEOs come in and just run away and hide. And I've always really appreciated that community focus, Charles. So thanks for jumping in the chat today and talking with everyone. Thanks, of course, to the admins for helping keeping the chat a nice, friendly, and clean place. And thanks for everyone for coming out and spending a bit of time with me today talking about cryptocurrencies on the internet. That is all from the Crypto Lark. Long live the blockchain, and peace out till next time.